Hey everyone, this is Lola. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, you are going to learn how to conjugate regular ER verbs in the past tense, or le passé composé as we say in French, and we're going to be using the auxiliary of the verb avoir. I've also included the negative, inversion or interrogative, and inversion in the negative or negative interrogative. So the passé composé has three parts to it. It has the subject, the auxiliary, and the past participle. I will show you each one in the next few slides. So the subject would be like a pronoun, or it could be a person's name. So je or tu, il, elle, qui and on, nous, vous, il and elle. The auxiliary using the verb avoir in the present tense is exactly what it is. So we would use everything that you see here in red. So the ai, as, the as, avant, avait, and on. Those would be your auxiliary. That would be the second part. And finally, the third part is the past participle. So to write the past participle, you simply take any regular ER verb which uses the avoir auxiliary. So the majority of ER verbs in French use the avoir auxiliary. So here's an example. I've taken the verb regarder, which ends with ER, and we're simply going to drop that ER and we're going to replace it with an E accent aigu. So originally it looked like this, and finally it's going to look like this. The ER changed to E accent aigu. So when you put all the three parts together, it'll look like this. So there's the subject, there's the auxiliary, and there's your past participle. J'ai regardé. So let's conjugate the whole thing now. So remember that regarder means to watch or look at. And again, we're using the avoir auxiliary. Remember, we're taking off the ERs and adding an E accent aigu. So there's your subject, your auxiliary, and your past participle. I watch, j'ai regardé. Tu as regardé, you watched. Il a regardé, he watched. And so on and so forth. So here you can see at the beginning we have our subjects or our pronouns. Then in blue over here we have the auxiliary from the verb avoir in the present tense. And then we add the past participle, regarder, to all of them. And we've taken off the ER and simply added an E accent aigu on each one. So we have j'ai regardé, tu as regardé, il a regardé, elle a regardé, qui a regardé, on a regardé. You can see the English translations here on the side. Nous avons regardé, vous avez regardé, ils ont regardé, elles ont regardé. And finally, here are some other regular ER verbs. So things like jouer, parler, demander, écouter, aimer, travailler, trouver, donner, penser, and manger. These are all regular ER verbs. So you would simply take off the ER and add the E accent aigu so they look like this. And you can see that on each one, we've done that. So practice conjugating the verbs and see how you do. The next two slides will give you the conjugated versions of the verbs jouer and parler. Remember that there are three parts. So as promised, here's the verb jouer, to play. And we've conjugated it. So it's j'ai joué, tu as joué, il a joué, elle a joué, Qui a joué? On a joué. Nous avons joué. Vous avez joué. Ils ont joué. Elles ont joué. Notice in blue, that's all our auxiliaries. And over here, the ER has been changed to E accent aigu for every single one of the past participles. So we've got our three parts. We've got the pronoun or the noun. We've got or the subject, we can call it that. This is the auxiliary and the past participle. Going on to the next slide, we see the verb parler conjugated. Again, j'ai parlé, tu as parlé, il a parlé, elle a parlé, qui a parlé, on a parlé. Nous avons parlé, vous avez parlé, ils ont parlé, elles ont parlé. And now we're going to take a look at the regular ER verbs in the negative form. Now remember, to make a sentence negative, you must add the words ne or an apostrophe and pas or jamais, which surround the auxiliary. So in the positive, we would say j'ai regardé, as we have already seen, which means I watched. And to make it negative, we have the ne or the n apostrophe before the auxiliary and the pas after the auxiliary. Here it's n apostrophe and not ne because starts with an A, the letter A. It's a vowel. So je n'ai pas regardé, or you can say je n'ai jamais regardé. So we'll take a look at this very slowly so we understand it. So here it is in the positive sense. J'ai regardé. We've got our subject, which is je. Over here it's a J apostrophe because this starts with a vowel. So j'ai regardé. And now to make it negative, we're going to say je n'ai pas regardé. Now notice the J apostrophe switched to JE. That's because we made this with an N apostrophe. Therefore, the JE doesn't work anymore. It just changes back to je. So the N apostrophe before the auxiliary and the pas after the auxiliary. And again, we still have our past participle, which has the E accent aigu. Je n'ai pas regardé. We have the same thing with the tu. Tu as regardé. We put the N apostrophe before the auxiliary and the pas after the auxiliary. Tu n'as pas regardé. The next one is il a regardé. Again, N apostrophe before the auxiliary and the pas after the auxiliary. Il n'a pas regardé. And then, of course, so on and so forth. Elle n'a pas regardé. Qui n'a pas regardé? On n'a pas regardé. Nous n'avons pas regardé. Vous n'avez pas regardé. Ils n'ont pas regardé. Elles n'ont pas regardé. Now we're going to look at regarder in the inversion form or interrogative. That's just when you want to ask a question. So to make a sentence a question, you just need to invert the subject and the auxiliary. So in regular form, we see tu as regardé. So to make it a question, we take these two and we flip it. So we have as-tu regardé. Here again is another example. Regular is elle a regardé. And then in inversion, we flip the L and the A, so it's a-t-elle regardé. But notice we added the letter T here, and it needs to be here. It's just a rule because A and L are both vowels, so you must put a T in there. A-t-elle regardé. Now we're going to look at regarder, which means to watch or look at in the inversion or interrogative form. So here we have je, and then to invert it, we're just going to flip it. So it becomes et je. Now, you notice that the je is je and not j apostrophe. That's because it's after. So we need to change it like this. So et je, and then regarder with a question mark. So remember, we have a dash between the et and the je, and then regarder with a question mark. And that gives us a question, which means, did I watch? We're going to do the same thing with the next one. It's tu as. We're going to flip it to as-tu, add regarder with a question mark, and it becomes did you watch? Now with il a, when we flip it, it's going to be two vowels together. So please remember to put the T in between. So a-t-il regardé? Did he watch? And then we will do the same for the other ones on the singular side with the T in between. So a-t-elle regardé? A-t-on regardé? Avons-nous regardé? Avez-vous regardé? Ont-ils regardé? Ont-elles regardé? Now we're going to take a look at regarder in the inversion form in the negative or negative interrogative. So to make a sentence negative from inversion or the negative interrogative that we just looked at, you must add the words ne or an apostrophe and pas or jamais. Remember, the ne or an apostrophe goes before the auxiliary and the pas goes after the subject. So this is different from what I showed you before in its regular form. So we're going to take a look at it so you see the difference. So with inversion, it's a-t-il regardé? Did he watch? And inversion in the negative would be n'a-t-il pas regardé? Did he not watch? So over here is the ne before the auxiliary and the pas after the subject. So here are some examples again with regarder. Ai-je regardé? So the N apostrophe goes before the auxiliary and the pas goes after the subject. N'ai-je pas regardé? Same thing here, the N apostrophe before, because a starts with a vowel and the pas goes right there after the subject. N'as-tu pas regardé? A-t-il becomes n'a-t-il, and then the pas goes right after the il. N'a-t-il pas regardé? Did he not watch? And then we see the rest of it again. So the N apostrophe goes before the auxiliary and the pas after the subject on each one. N'a-t-elle pas regardé? N'a-t-on pas regardé? N'avons-nous pas regardé? N'avez-vous pas regardé? N'ont-ils pas regardé? N'ont-elles pas regardé? So now we're just going to take a look at some examples of sentences. Let's use the verb jouer, which means to play. J'ai joué au basketball. That would just be in the normal positive form. Je n'ai pas joué au basketball. That's negative. Then we've got inversion, where we ask a question, where we flip the subject and the auxiliary. So, ai-je joué au basketball? And then made that negative. N'ai-je pas joué au basketball? Here's another example with the verb aimer, which means to like. Nous avons aimé le basketball. Nous n'avons pas aimé le basketball. Avons-nous aimé le basketball? And n'avons-nous pas aimé le basketball? Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please give this a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this. Thanks again.